warm-ups, lines, passing patterns around cones, maybe a finishing drill, and if there's time at the end, a scrimmage. If you walk onto most youth training fields decades ago, the structure looked almost identical. The game is treated just like a dessert, and something the players earn after they've done the real work. Then the US Soccer Federation wondered why the national team and the best soccer clubs in the US were so much behind the rest of the world. They decided to standardize the coaching methodology of youth players. The widely propagated and accepted methodology is called play, practice, play. Note that the women, both at club and national level, are doing exceptionally well, regularly winning the World Cup actually. They had coaches from basically the same pool as the men. So the theory that the methodology was the problem is fishy at best, but maybe that's a topic for another video. First, let's quickly define it. Play, practice, play is exactly what it sounds like. You start with a game, play, then you move on to focused practice activity based on what you have observed, that's the practice part, and then you go back into a game again, which is the second play. No scrimmage for fun, no drill for sake of just doing drills. It's intentional. The first game creates the problem, the practice phase addresses the problem, and then the second game tests whether the learning actually transferred. That's the core idea. Now let's look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let's talk about the good. Why is it so powerful? Because the player learns best in context. When we start sessions with isolated technical drills, we're often teaching solutions before the players even understand the problem. We're giving answers to questions they haven't asked yet. And when you start with play, something different happens. The game exposes gaps. You create a reference point that brings all the players on the same page. Maybe your team can't build from under pressure. Maybe the struggle to create width. Maybe they force passes into traffic instead of away. Maybe they don't recognize overloads. When they experience the problem first, the learning becomes meaningful. There's recency, because it just happened and we all remember it. There's urgency, we see that it's a problem that prevents us from moving to the next issue. Then there's relevance. We know it's a problem because otherwise we wouldn't have shown that as a problem at all. You're no longer saying, today we're going to work on switching the point of attack. Instead, the players feel the need to switch the point of attack. That difference matters a lot. So what should that first play phase actually look like? The theory is that it should be a small-sided game, like 3 versus 3 or 5 versus 5. It should also be with minimal restrictions. And finally, you should diagnose the patterns on the spot and then come up with the next activity to address them. You shouldn't interrupt them at all, except maybe to ask a question that you want them to hint for the activity later. A question can be something like, how do you think your teammates prefer the ball when running forward? In reality, you probably know your players and your team. What you should really do is create an environment where you will expose the patterns that need to be fixed directly to your players. For example, you can still have a 5v5 setting, but if you try to show them that the spacing is important when attacking, you need to make the field area a bit tight for them. If it's half field, then they will not experience an issue with the space. Similarly, if you want them to see how they play from the back, you should see that if they can remove the option for the long pass or just simply kicking the ball as far as possible. You have to remove that option. There might be a problem you have seen in a game at the weekend, but you're not seeing in practice because your seemingly unstructured play is structured to not ask that question. The good version of play, practice, play is when you use this section to show your team the reference point of what problems are we trying to fix. The bad version is that you think you give them all the freedom and then you try to scramble something on the spot to coach the next based on what you've seen. It's like going unprepared for a test. And yes, there is also an ugly aspect of play, practice, play later in the video. And then comes the practice phase. Let's say that we have tried and failed to build from the back in the play section earlier. Now we need to set a 3v2 directional activity, for example, to work on some of that. Firstly, we give a numerical advantage for the team. Secondly, we ask the questions to help the players think through the problem. The idea of removing complexity and giving help, both with overload and instructions, it's called scaffolding. Helping structure that we will remove in the next phase of the play if the lesson has been learned. The bad version of it is when we have a 3v2 directional activity and that's it. We can have a great play section earlier, and even have this activity being very relevant. But we can't remove the coaching out of it. The coach still has to coach. The coach still has to make the connection from the previous section to this one for the players. The coach still has to use the freeze frame method for analyzing the moment with the players. And yes, there is even an ugly side of this section. But firstly, let's return to the good side of the second play aspect. This is where the magic either happens or it doesn't. Remove most of the constraints. Go back to the free-flowing, small-sided game. Now watch carefully. Did the spacing improve? Are the players recognizing overloads? Is the targeted behavior appearing natural? But don't force it. Don't over-celebrate the first successful action. Let the game provide evidence. If you see improvement, great. If not, that's an information too. Learning is not a straight line. Let's look at a few common mistakes that turn this methodology from good to bad, even if designed properly. The first mistake is overcoaching the first play phase. If you script it too heavily, you eliminate the very problems you're trying to uncover. The second mistake is giving coaching points to problems not in the game. If you're already sharing what's today's problem without actually seeing it and before the ball even starts rolling, you're not really using play practice play. You're just inserting a scrimmage at the beginning. A third mistake is stopping the final game constantly. If the second play turns into freeze frame theater every minute, then players never experience flow or decision making under real speed. And finally, turning the practice phase into an isolated technique work. The closer your activity resembles the game, the greater the transfer of knowledge is. Trust the game more than the cones. Now, age does matter. With younger players, especially under 9, the model looks like play, very short practice, and then more play. Their attention spans are shorter, their need for repetition through games is higher. With older players, you can go deeper tactically. You can layer in more detail. You can even bring examples of what happened in the game on the weekend. They will remember the game and will understand better why this is important. But the principle stays the same. Game first, targeted intervention, game again. Even at higher levels, the structure respects how football actually unfolds. Football is not a sequence of rehearsed patterns. It's constantly shifting puzzle, so training should look like the puzzle. And finally, let's talk about the ugly. Play practice play definitely helped a lot of youth coaches. It gives them structure and explains how they can coach while also giving the players a lot of time to play and to experience the game. However, what I've seen is that many coaches use play practice play as a free pass to not actually coach. They start with the first activity as a scrimmage, then they invent a practice activity on the spot that often is just 1v1 or a rondo or some unopposed shooting, and finally they scrimmage again. No coaching in between, no connection, no thought process. Just trying to break the practice into sections to show some activity by the coach. Don't forget that coaches are there to coach, not to babysit scrimmages. The ugly aspect of play practice play is that it's given the permission to some coaches to do exactly that. So next time you design a session, ask yourself one question. Am I starting with answers, or am I letting the play and the game create the questions first? Because sometimes the most powerful coaching move is simply pressing play. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.